The wooden chair creaked beneath me as I settled near the window, its glass smudged and dust-laden from years of neglect. Outside, the vast Texas plains stretched endlessly under a sky heavy with muted gray clouds, the wind whispering secrets through dry grass that bowed and swayed like an ocean in a slow, mournful rhythm. The house around me was quiet, too quiet, its rooms hollow and echoing memories instead of laughter. I traced a finger along the dusty sill, watching the faint outline of bird tracks marked by the morning's light rain. A small reminder that life still stirred somewhere beyond these walls. The silence pressed against my ears, thick and unyielding. It was a silence that had settled deep into the bones of this old house, wrapping itself around my heart like a shroud. I blinked slowly, letting the weight of it settle over me as I gazed out into the empty distance, where the horizon seemed to dissolve into a blur of dust and sky. Years ago, this view had been alive with movement. Children playing barefoot in the yard, neighbors waving from porches, the hum of tractors working the fields. Now only the wind remained, carrying with it the faintest echoes of a lifelong past. I sighed, my breath fogging the glass as I leaned closer, trying to imagine the sounds that once filled this place. The creak of a screen door swinging open, the chorus of voices sharing stories and laughter, the clatter of plates during dinner beneath a warm kitchen light. The memories were like fragile threads, weaving through the quiet, fragile and fading. I wondered when the last time was that I had heard a genuine smile, or felt the touch of a familiar hand. In the stillness, the contrast between then and now felt like a wound reopening. The house, once a sanctuary, was now a mausoleum of solitude. The walls seemed to close in, their faded wallpaper peeling like the pages of a forgotten diary. I traced the chipped paint on the windowsill, fingers trembling slightly, feeling the roughness beneath my skin, a tactile reminder of the passage of time and the erosion of connection. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying a chill that seeped through the thin glass and wrapped around my spine. I thought about the vastness beyond this small room, the endless stretches of land that had been my home for more than half a century. The same land that once teemed with life now felt oppressively empty. The neighbors had moved away or passed on, the local church was a shadow of its former congregation, and the little grocery store where I had once exchanged smiles and pleasantries was shuttered, its windows dark and lifeless. The loneliness was a physical presence, settling over me like the dust on the windowsill, impossible to ignore. My eyes settled on the horizon, where the sun was beginning to dip beneath the clouds, casting a pale, cold light across the fields. The amber hues of the evening sun that once bathed this land in warmth were now muted, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I felt a hollow ache in my chest, a yearning for something I could not name. The rhythm of life outside continued without me, birds calling to one another, the distant rumble of a passing car. But inside these walls time seemed frozen, marked only by the slow, steady ticking of an old clock on the mantel. The chair beneath me groaned again, and I shifted, pulling my shawl tighter around my shoulders. The fabric smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs, a scent that mingled with the stale air of the room. I closed my eyes briefly, letting the quiet wash over me, but it was no comfort. The emptiness was a weight, pressing down with the heaviness of years spent watching the world pass by from this window. I had grown accustomed to solitude, but tonight it felt different, more acute, more invasive. Outside, a single crow cawed sharply, its call piercing the stillness like a sudden reminder of the world's indifference. I watched it hop along the cracked fence post, its black feathers ruffled against the wind. It seemed as solitary as I felt, a dark silhouette against the fading light. The image stirred a pang of kinship and despair in me. I was part of this vast expanse, yet utterly disconnected from it. The very land that had been my refuge now felt like a prison. I remembered the days when the porch was crowded with friends and family, when the air was thick with the scent of barbecue and freshly cut grass. The laughter that spilled from open windows, the music that drifted from radios and guitars, the stories told under a sky full of stars. It all seemed like a distant dream, fading at the edges like the peeling paint on the porch railing. Those days belonged to another lifetime, one where I was never truly alone. But now, the only company I had was the whispering wind and the slow passage of shadows across the floor. I longed for a spark, a sign that I was not invisible to the world beyond these walls. I reached out, fingertips brushing the cold glass as if I could somehow touch the life that continued outside. The chill seeped into my skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of my memories. The evening deepened, and the first stars blinked faintly into existence. Their distant light was a quiet consolation, tiny beacons in a vast, indifferent universe. I leaned my head against the window, closing my eyes to the night sounds, the rustle of leaves, the far-off howl of a coyote. Each sound was a thread connecting me to the world, fragile and tenuous but real. Loneliness had become my constant companion, a shadow that followed me from room to room, settling in every empty chair and silent corner. It was a presence I had learned to live with, but tonight, it felt heavier, as if the vast expanse of sky and land outside was echoing the emptiness within. The house sighed around me, its wooden bones creaking in the growing darkness. I wished for a moment to be seen, not just glanced at but truly noticed. To have my silence broken by a voice that carried warmth and understanding. The kind of connection that could pierce the isolation and remind me that I was still part of a world beyond this dusty window. But for now I remained still, watching the night deepen, the wind carrying with it the distant, elusive sounds of life. The night deepened, and as I lay in bed, the silence around me thickened like a heavy fog settling over the house. My mind drifted back, carried by the pull of memories that felt both distant and vivid, like photographs fading at the edges but still full of color where it mattered most. I saw the sun-dappled porch in my mind's eye, where the neighbors gathered on warm summer evenings. Their laughter was a melody I could almost hear again, the kind of laughter that filled rooms and spilled out into the night air, blending with the strum of guitars and the soft murmur of shared stories. I remembered the way the old oak tree in the yard had offered shade to children playing tag, their feet pounding the earth in wild abandon. The scent of freshly baked bread wafted through open windows, mingling with the perfume of blooming jasmine climbing the porch posts. It was a symphony of small joys, simple moments stitched together by the threads of community and belonging. The sounds of footsteps on gravel paths, voices raised in song, the clinking of glasses in quiet toasts. All of it was etched deep into the fabric of my past. Our family dinners were lively affairs, the long wooden table crowded with laughter and conversation. My mother's voice, rich and warm, would carry through the kitchen as she called out reminders to pass the cornbread or fetch another plate. The smell of slow-cooked stew simmering on the stove mingled with the crispness of freshly picked vegetables from the garden. My father's old fiddle often came out after the meal, its notes weaving through the air like threads of memory. Those nights were full of life, a stark contrast to the stillness that had since settled over my home. Neighbors were more than just familiar faces back then. They were an extension of family. The Hendersons from down the lane would drop by unannounced, their children tumbling into our yard with scraped knees and wide smiles. The Johnsons hosted potlucks where everyone brought a dish, and the air was thick with the shared warmth of food and friendship. Music was a constant companion, whether from a radio tuned into country stations or the impromptu jam sessions that erupted on warm afternoons. The community was a patchwork quilt of stories, laughter, and shared hardships. But time has a way of unraveling even the tightest bonds. As the years passed, the children grew and moved away, drawn by the promise of cities and new lives. The old friends drifted apart, their visits becoming less frequent until they stopped altogether. The church pews grew emptier, the store closed its doors, and the once vibrant gatherings faded into memories that felt more like whispers. The vibrant tapestry of my past had been reduced to threads, fragile and worn. I could still see the faces in my mind, the twinkle in Mrs. Carter's eyes as she recounted stories of her youth, the steady hands of Mr. Thompson as he taught the boys how to fish in the nearby creek. I recalled the music that had filled the air, the songs sung around campfires, and the soft hymns rising from Sunday congregations. Those were the sounds of belonging, of shared experience and comfort. Now the only music was the wind, and the only congregation was silence. There were moments I tried to hold on to these memories, clutching them like precious jewels in the dark. I would sit by the window during the late afternoon, watching the amber light stretch across the fields, and imagine the past coming alive again. The smell of grass after a rainstorm, the distant bark of a dog, the laughter of children chasing fireflies. All of it seemed so close yet unreachable. It was a bittersweet ache, a longing for a time when the world felt full and welcoming. Sometimes I would find an old photograph tucked away in a drawer, faded and creased, yet still capable of igniting a spark of warmth. I'd trace the faces of those long gone or moved away, remembering the moments frozen in silver and sepia tones. The smiles captured in those images were bright and alive, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude of the present. I wondered if they thought of me as I thought of them, or if the busy rhythms of their lives had swept them far beyond these small corners of memory. The house itself seemed to remember those days too. The worn floorboards creaked underfoot as if whispering stories of footsteps long past. The faded wallpaper held the imprint of hands that had once traced its patterns with curiosity and delight. The kitchen counters bore the stains of meals prepared with love and care. Even the air seemed heavy with the ghosts of laughter and song, shadows that lingered just beyond the edges of sight. Yet, despite the richness of these recollections, there was an undeniable ache beneath it all, a sense of loss that threaded through the fabric of my heart. The lively gatherings, the warmth of closeness, the music and voices that once filled every corner had slipped away like sand through fingers. I was left with a quiet house and a growing emptiness that no memory could fully fill. I often wondered how it came to be this way. Was it the slow drift of time, the inevitable changes life brings? Or had I retreated too far into myself, allowing the world to grow distant? The question lingered unanswered, a silent companion to the loneliness that shadowed my days. The contrast between then and now felt like a chasm, one I felt powerless to bridge. Still, in those moments of remembrance there was a flicker of something precious, a reminder of what had been and perhaps what could be again. The memories were not just ghosts but seeds, waiting to be nurtured into something new. They held the warmth of connection, the proof that life had once been full of color and light. And somewhere beneath the weight of solitude, that knowledge stirred quietly, like a heartbeat beneath the stillness. As the night wore on, I found myself returning again and again to those memories, letting them wash over me until the ache softened just enough to breathe. I imagined the porch alive once more, the hum of neighbors' voices mingling with the rustle of leaves. I pictured the music drifting through open windows, the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven, the gentle touch of a hand on my shoulder. Those images became a balm, fragile yet potent, a fragile bridge spanning the gulf between past and present. For a moment the house felt less empty, the silence less deafening. In the quiet hours before dawn, I held onto the echoes of a vibrant past, their warmth a quiet promise against the cold expanse of night. The night had settled into a deep velvety quiet when a faint sound stirred the stillness outside my window. At first, I thought it might be the wind weaving through the old trees or the distant rustle of dry leaves skittering across the porch. But then beneath the hush of darkness, a soft melody emerged, fragile and tentative, lilting through the air like a whispered secret. The notes floated on the breeze, delicate and pure, as if carried by some unseen hand reaching across the empty fields. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, straining to catch every nuance of the tune. It was a song sung gently, with a voice that trembled with both sorrow and hope. The words were faint, almost swallowed by the night, but their meaning shimmered like a fragile thread woven through the notes. It was as if someone was singing directly to the shadows, or perhaps calling out to a world that had long forgotten to listen. For the first time in many nights, the silence that wrapped around me felt pierced by something alive. My breath caught in my throat as I stood rooted by the window, my heart stirring in a way that surprised me. The song seemed to reach deep into the hollow spaces inside me, filling the air with an unexpected warmth. It was a lifeline cast across the darkness, and I clung to it with trembling hands. The melody carried a tenderness that spoke of loneliness, but also of resilience. A voice carrying the weight of years but refusing to be broken. I imagined the singer somewhere just beyond the horizon, a figure silhouetted against the moonlight, pouring their soul into the night. The song was a bridge, fragile yet unyielding, spanning the vast distance between isolation and connection. I wanted to call out, to answer the song with my own voice, but the words caught in my throat. Instead I stood still, letting the music wash over me like a balm. The notes seemed to dissolve the cold shadows in the room, replacing them with flickers of light and color. For a moment the house felt less empty, less abandoned. The song found its way into the corners where silence had taken root, stirring something that had long lain dormant. I traced the outline of the window pane, fingers trembling with a sudden surge of emotion. The music was a lifeline, a fragile thread tying me back to the world beyond these walls. It whispered of stories yet untold, of connections waiting to be made. The loneliness that had pressed so heavily against my chest loosened its grip, replaced by a flicker of hope I had thought lost. The melody drifted slowly away, carried by the wind as if reluctant to leave. I listened until the last note faded into the night, holding on to the echo as it slipped beyond earshot. The quiet that followed was not the suffocating silence I had known, but a gentle hush, like the pause between heartbeats. I closed my eyes, letting the memory of the song linger, a fragile light in the darkness. Sleep eluded me that night, my thoughts entwined with the stranger's voice. Where had it come from? Who was the soul behind that haunting melody? The questions swirled in my mind, mingling with the memories of days gone by. The music had stirred something deep within me, a yearning not just for sound, but for the touch of another's presence, a reminder that I was not truly alone. As dawn began to pale the sky, the world outside seemed to hold its breath. The song had left its mark, a delicate imprint on the fabric of the night. I found myself waiting, almost expectant, for the melody to return. Though I did not know the singer, their voice had become a beacon in the vast quiet, a testament to the power of music to pierce through the loneliest hours. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn again and again to the window at twilight, listening for that distant song. Each evening as the sun dipped low and the shadows stretched across the land, I hoped to hear the faint strains of that voice breaking the silence. The music became a ritual, a small tether to the world beyond my solitude. The song, gentle and unassuming, seemed to carry a message meant for me alone. A reminder that even in the vast expanse of loneliness, there could be moments of connection, of shared feeling. It was a thread woven through the fabric of night, fragile but persistent, a promise whispered on the wind. With each passing night, the melody grew clearer, more confident, as if the singer too was reaching out, searching for a listener. I imagined their hands strumming a guitar beneath a starlit sky, their breath steadying with each verse. The music was a language beyond words, speaking directly to the heart, bridging the distance between two solitary souls. The presence of that song transformed the way I saw the world outside my window. The empty fields were no longer just barren stretches of earth but places where life stirred unseen. The wind was no longer a cold, indifferent force but a carrier of voices and stories, weaving invisible connections through the night. I began to wonder about the person behind the melody. What stories they held, what loneliness they bore. Were they as isolated as I felt? Did they too long for a companion to share their song? The thought that someone else might be reaching out across the silence filled me with a fragile hope, a tentative belief that I was not as alone as I had feared. The music brought with it a sense of possibility, a quiet invitation to step beyond the confines of my solitude. It whispered of new beginnings, of the courage to seek connection, even when the world felt vast and unyielding. The song was more than notes and words. It was a lifeline, a fragile bridge spanning the gulf between isolation and belonging. That night, as I listened to the fading echoes, I felt a stirring within, a gentle awakening. The loneliness that had cocooned me for so long began to loosen its hold, replaced by a yearning to reach out, to find the source of that voice and share in the healing power of song. The window, once a barrier between me and the world, had become a portal, a place where music and memory converged, where hope flickered like a candle flame in the dark. And as the last notes vanished into the night, I knew that something had shifted within me. The stranger's song had broken through the silence, and with it, the first fragile threads of something new began to weave themselves into the fabric of my life. Each evening as the sun dipped low and the sky faded through shades of amber and violet, I found myself drawn back to the window, waiting for the stranger's song to return. It had become a fragile ritual, a thread of light weaving through the loneliness that had so long wrapped itself around my heart. The melody, soft and unwavering, offered a comfort that the silence of these walls could never provide. It was as though the music filled the empty spaces in the room, wrapping around me like a shawl against the chill of isolation. I began to anticipate those moments, the way the first notes would drift through the gathering dusk like a gentle breeze. The song seemed to carry with it a warmth that seeped into the cracks of the house, chasing away shadows that clung stubbornly to corners and crevices. The familiar strains became a beacon, guiding me through the twilight hours when the world outside seemed to hold its breath. In the quiet that followed each melody, I would sit by the window, letting the notes settle deep within me. The music was a balm, soothing the ache of years spent in solitude. It was strange how a song simple, unadorned, could reach into the depths of my being, stirring emotions I thought had long been buried. Hope, once a flicker, began to glow steadily, weaving through the fabric of my days. The melody had become more than just sound. It was a companion that filled the emptiness, a presence that reminded me I was not forgotten. It whispered of a shared yearning, of hearts reaching out across distance and silence. The song carried stories I could not hear but somehow understood, a language of longing and resilience that spoke directly to the soul. Sometimes I would close my eyes and let the music wash over me, imagining the hands that strummed the guitar strings, the breath that carried the tune into the night. I pictured a figure sitting beneath the vast Texas sky, their voice rising with quiet strength, seeking connection in the darkness. The thought of this unknown singer filled me with a warmth that seeped into the cold corners of my heart. The music became a lifeline, a tether anchoring me to the world beyond these walls. It transformed the night from a place of loneliness into one of possibility. Each note was a step closer to breaking free from the isolation that had settled like dust over my life. I felt myself leaning into the song, letting it carry me beyond the boundaries of my solitude. With each passing evening, the melody grew more familiar, its rhythms intertwining with the beat of my own heart. It was a quiet conversation between two souls adrift, one singing into the darkness, the other listening with a heart wide open. The music bridged the gap between us, weaving an invisible thread that connected my lonely room to the vast night beyond. I began to notice the subtle ways the song changed, small shifts in tempo and tone that hinted at the singer's mood and story. Sometimes the melody was tender and wistful, like a sigh carried on the wind. Other times it was steady and sure, a declaration of strength in the face of loneliness. Each variation deepened the connection, pulling me further from the shadows that had held me captive. As the nights unfolded, I found myself looking forward to the song not just as a comfort, but as a symbol of hope. It became a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was a possibility for light, for connection, for healing. The music whispered that I was not alone, that somewhere out there, another heart beat with the same quiet longing. The world outside my window seemed to shift in response to the song's presence. The empty fields were no longer barren stretches but spaces alive with unseen stories. The wind carried the melody through the trees, rustling leaves that seemed to tremble with newfound life. The night air, once cold and indifferent, now felt charged with a gentle energy, as if the music had breathed spirit into the very fabric of the world. I began to carry the song with me beyond the window's reach. It lingered in my thoughts during the day, a soft hum beneath the noise of routine. The melody became a companion in moments of solitude, a reminder that connection was possible even when it seemed out of reach. It wrapped around me like a secret, a promise whispered in the quiet spaces of my life. The music also stirred memories of other songs, the hymns sung in church pews, the lullabies my mother sang at bedtime, the country tunes that once filled the air during summer nights. Those memories mingled with the stranger's melody, creating a tapestry of sound that wove through the years. The music was a bridge between past and present, a thread that linked my history to the possibility of something new. I found myself humming the tune softly as I went about my days, letting it seep into the rhythm of my life. The song became a part of me, a quiet reassurance that even in the vastness of solitude, there was a spark waiting to be kindled. It was a reminder that I was still capable of feeling, of hoping, of reaching out. One evening, as the melody drifted through the fading light, I felt a courage stirring within me, a desire to move beyond listening and step into the world that the music hinted at. The song had opened a door, and though I did not yet know what lay beyond, I felt a pull toward it, a yearning to find the source of that voice and the stories it carried. The moments by the window grew longer, the anticipation sharper. The music no longer just soothed my heart, it stirred it, awakening a longing for connection and understanding. I realized that the song was not just a gift to me but a call, to reach out, to break the silence, to find companionship in the shared language of song. And so, as the sun set and the evening sky deepened to the soft blues and purples of twilight, I sat by the window, waiting for the melody to rise once more. With every note that floated on the breeze, I felt the walls around me soften, the shadows recede, and a quiet hope take root. The music was no longer just a sound in the night. It was a lifeline, a promise, and a beginning. The evening air carried the familiar strains of the song once again, weaving through the shadows like a soft invitation. I stood by the window, the fading light casting long silhouettes across the worn floorboards, heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. The music had become my tether to the world beyond these walls, but tonight, a new impulse stirred within me. A quiet courage, fragile but insistent. I realized I no longer wanted to be a mere listener, a passive recipient of this distant melody. I needed to find the voice behind the song, to see the person who reached out to me through the night. The thought both exhilarated and terrified me. Years of solitude had woven a safety net around my heart, a cocoon of quiet and stillness. But the song was a beacon, a call to step beyond the familiar confines of my home and into the unknown. I hesitated, fingers tracing the outline of the windowpane as if trying to summon the strength to open it and step outside. The world beyond was vast and unpredictable, filled with faces I no longer recognized and paths I had ceased to wander. Yet the song was a promise, a lifeline that pulled gently but persistently at the edges of my resolve. It whispered of connection, of shared stories waiting to be discovered. The music had stirred something deep within me, a yearning not only to hear but to be heard. I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders, the weight of years pressing down, but beneath it, a flicker of determination flickered to life. That night I found myself pacing the small living room, the melody echoing in my mind like a pulse. I thought back to the days when I had ventured out into the community without hesitation. Gatherings on the porch, visits to neighbors, the hum of conversation flowing like a river. Those moments felt distant now, yet they were a part of me, a wellspring of courage waiting to be tapped. I resolved to take the first step, however tentative. The following afternoon I donned my worn boots and a faded jacket, the fabric soft from years of wear. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the fields as I stepped outside, the dry earth crunching beneath my feet. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and distant rain. My heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and fear as I crossed the threshold, leaving behind the safety of the house. The neighborhood was quiet, its familiar contours softened by time. The old mailbox at the end of the driveway still leaned slightly, and the gravel road stretched ahead, leading toward the distant hum of life I had long been too hesitant to seek. I walked slowly, allowing the rhythm of my steps to steady my nerves. Each footfall was a small victory, a gentle assertion of my desire to reconnect. As I moved further from home, the melody from the night before played softly in my mind, guiding me like a compass. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of something new. I passed by the empty lot where children once played, their laughter now a memory etched in the cracked pavement. The scent of freshly turned earth from a nearby garden mingled with the fading light, a reminder that life continued, quietly persistent. I felt eyes upon me, curious glances from across the street, nods of acknowledgement from neighbors tending to their yards. The world was awakening around me, and though the loneliness tugged at the edges of my courage, I pressed forward. I found myself humming the stranger's song softly, a small act of connection to the voice that had drawn me out. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows as I reached the edge of the neighborhood, where the houses thinned and the open fields began. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of sage and earth. I paused, heart racing, and looked out over the vast expanse, the horizon stretching endlessly beneath a sky brushed with pink and gold. It was a world both familiar and foreign, a place where I could lose myself or find something new. The music remained alive in my mind, a steady presence urging me onward. I thought of the courage it took to sing into the night, to share one's voice with the silence. The thought steadied me, and I took a step forward, then another, moving toward the source of the song as if drawn by an invisible thread. As I walked, memories surfaced, times when I had opened my door to a neighbor in need, moments of shared laughter and tears, the comfort of knowing I was part of a community. Those memories were anchors, reminding me that connection was possible, that the walls of solitude could be breached. The song was a beacon, a guide through the dark. The path ahead was uncertain, but I no longer feared the unknown. The music had awakened a longing too profound to ignore, a desire to reach beyond the confines of my solitude and embrace the possibility of companionship. With each step, I felt the weight of years lift slightly, replaced by a fragile hope. The evening air grew cooler, and the first stars began to twinkle in the deepening sky. The melody, once distant, now seemed close, an invitation to follow, to seek, to find. I walked on, the stranger's song a compass guiding me through the gathering night, toward a connection that awaited just beyond the horizon. The evening air was crisp and still as I followed the fading trail of the song, each note a beacon guiding me toward the source. The path wound gently through the open fields, the tall grass whispering softly around my ankles, illuminated by the pale glow of a rising moon. My heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness, the distance between me and the singer shrinking with every step. Finally, beyond a cluster of ancient oaks, I saw a faint light flickering, a small campfire crackling beneath a sky dusted with stars. The figure seated beside the fire was hunched over a guitar, fingers moving deftly along the strings, coaxing out the melody I had come to know so well. Their voice, raw and unpolished, rose into the night with a quiet strength that belied the solitude etched into their posture. For a moment I simply stood there, rooted in the shadows, absorbing the scene like a long-forgotten dream come alive. When the song ended, the silence that followed felt like a sacred pause. The stranger looked up, eyes meeting mine with a mixture of surprise and cautious warmth. The flickering firelight cast flickers of gold and shadow across their weathered face, revealing lines carved by years of hardship and hope. It was then that I realized how much this moment meant. A crossing from isolation into connection, from silence into shared understanding. Tentatively, I stepped forward, my voice barely above a whisper. I heard your song. The words hung in the night air, fragile and uncertain. They smiled, a slow, genuine curve of lips that softened the weight of their solitude. I'm glad, they said simply. It's been a long time since I had an audience. I sat down on a nearby log, the warmth of the fire reaching out to touch the chill in my bones. We began to talk, the conversation weaving between pauses and laughter, stories and silences that spoke volumes. The singer's name was Samuel, a man whose life had been shaped by loss and resilience, whose music was both a confession and a balm. He told me of nights spent wandering these fields, guitar in hand, singing to the stars when no one else would listen. His voice was a vessel for pain and hope, each song a thread connecting him to a world that often felt out of reach. I shared my own story, the years of solitude, the aching memories, the lonely nights spent by the window waiting for a sign. As we spoke, the walls I had built around myself began to crumble, brick by fragile brick. The loneliness that had settled deep within me softened in the presence of another, who understood its weight. Our stories intertwined, two lives marked by quiet suffering, but also by an unspoken determination to find meaning and connection. Music became our common language, a bridge spanning the gulf between us. Samuel strummed his guitar again, this time with me humming softly alongside him, our voices weaving together in the night air. The fire crackled, sending sparks spiraling upward like tiny stars, a silent witness to the birth of a friendship forged in shared solitude. In that moment, under the vast expanse of sky, I felt a profound sense of belonging, a rare and precious gift after so many years of isolation. The stranger's song had become a lifeline, pulling me from the shadows into a space where I was seen, heard, and understood. We talked late into the night, the hours slipping away with the ease of old friends reunited. Samuel's stories were filled with humor and heartbreak, his music a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I found myself laughing and crying in equal measure, the weight of years lifting with each shared word. As dawn approached, the first light softened the darkness, painting the fields in hues of pink and gold. We sat in companionable silence, the fire reduced to glowing embers, both of us changed by the night's encounter. The vastness of the world around us no longer felt empty but alive with possibility. Before parting, Samuel handed me a small notebook, its cover worn and pages filled with handwritten lyrics and sketches. These are the songs that kept me going, he said. Maybe they'll speak to you too. I accepted the gift with trembling hands, a symbol of trust and connection that I vowed to honor. As I turned to leave, I glanced back at the figure by the fire, feeling a deep gratitude for the courage it had taken to share their voice, and for the courage I had found to listen. Walking home beneath the awakening sky, the notebook clutched to my chest, I felt a quiet resolve blossoming within me. The stranger's song had led me to a new beginning, one shaped by friendship, music, and the shared stories that bind us all. The night's encounter was not an ending but a doorway, an invitation to embrace connection, and to heal the cracks left by years of solitude. The melody that had once drifted through the darkness was now a living thread woven into the tapestry of my life, a reminder that even in the loneliest moments, we are never truly alone. The days that followed our meeting unfolded like the gentle turning of a page, each one revealing new layers of connection and belonging I had long thought lost. Samuel and I began to weave ourselves into the fabric of the small community that had once felt so distant. The music that had bridged the gap between our solitude became a beacon, drawing others from their own quiet corners to listen, to share, to heal. Word spread slowly at first, neighbors catching wind of the melodies drifting through the evening air. Curious glances exchanged over garden fences, the soft murmur of greetings in the local store. The porch where I had once sat alone now echoed with the hum of conversation and laughter as familiar faces returned, drawn by the warmth of shared experience. The barrier of silence that had kept us apart began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of camaraderie that filled the spaces between us. Samuel's music became the heart of this new gathering, a language that spoke beyond words, carrying with it the stories and sorrows of many. Evenings were spent beneath the wide Texas sky, the flicker of lanterns casting dancing shadows on weathered faces as voices rose in song and storytelling. The community, once scattered and silent, found rhythm and voice again. I found myself reconnected not only with Samuel and the neighbors but with the landscape itself. The fields and trees no longer seemed empty or indifferent but alive with possibility. I joined in tending a small garden shared among us, the earth yielding fresh herbs and vegetables that nourished both body and spirit. The scent of jasmine and sage mingled with the sound of laughter and song, infusing the air with a new vitality. Old friendships rekindled as neighbors who had drifted away returned, tentative at first but encouraged by the blossoming sense of community. Stories were shared, of hardship and hope, of losses mourned and joys celebrated. The porch became a gathering place once more, a circle of light in the darkness where we found strength in each other's presence. Through these connections, I began to reclaim parts of myself that solitude had hidden away. The fear of reaching out, the hesitation born of years spent alone, gave way to a quiet confidence. I found joy in small moments, a shared meal, a spontaneous song, a smile exchanged across the room. The loneliness that had once enveloped me loosened its grip, replaced by a sense of belonging that filled the corners of my heart. Samuel and I continued to share music and stories, our friendship deepening with each passing day. His songs carried the echoes of our shared journey, a testament to the resilience found in connection. Together we encouraged others to find their own voices, to step beyond the silence that had kept them isolated. The community blossomed with newfound energy, each person contributing a thread to the growing tapestry. The transformation was not without its challenges. Old wounds surfaced amid the healing, and not every heart was ready to open. Yet, even in moments of tension and doubt, the music remained a steady presence, a reminder of the bonds we were forging. The porch became a sanctuary where differences softened and understanding grew. As the seasons changed, the gatherings expanded beyond our neighborhood, drawing in travelers and friends from nearby towns. The music and stories spilled into the wider world, carrying with them the message that even in the quietest places, connection and hope could take root. The community became a living testament to the power of shared experience and the healing found in companionship. I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. From the lonely nights by the dusty window to the vibrant gatherings beneath the stars. The stranger's song had been the spark that ignited a transformation not only in my life, but in the lives of many. It was a reminder that even the smallest act of reaching out could ripple outward, touching hearts and mending wounds. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the porch hummed with song, I looked around at the faces illuminated by lantern light. There was laughter and tears, conversations weaving through the warm air like old friends reunited. The loneliness that had once seemed insurmountable was now a distant memory, replaced by the rich tapestry of community and connection. In that moment I understood that the journey was ongoing, a continual weaving of stories, songs, and shared moments. The music that had brought us together was more than melody. It was a lifeline, a bridge spanning the distances between us. It carried the promise that no one need ever be truly alone. The porch, once a symbol of isolation, had become a place of gathering and hope. The window where I had watched the world pass by was now a portal to a life renewed. A life filled with friendship, music, and the shared warmth of human connection. The story we were writing together was one of healing and resilience, a testament to the enduring power of community. As the night deepened and the stars blinked overhead, I joined in the song, my voice rising with the others in a chorus that filled the air. It was a song of belonging, of hope reborn, and of the quiet strength found in opening one's heart. The music carried us forward, a living thread binding us in a shared journey toward light and love. The porch was alive with music and laughter beneath a sky dusted with stars, a gentle hum of voices weaving through the warm evening air. I sat among friends and neighbors, the flicker of lantern light casting soft shadows on familiar faces, a tapestry of stories and smiles that had folded me into their midst. The loneliness that had once clung to me like a second skin had melted away, replaced by a quiet joy that pulsed in every shared glance and whispered word. I breathed in the scent of jasmine and sage, the earth beneath us humming with life and possibility. The air was thick with the resonance of song, our voices rising together in a chorus that felt like a balm to every aching heart. The music carried us beyond the boundaries of this small Texas town, weaving a thread of connection that stretched through time and space, binding us in a shared human experience. As I sang, I felt the years of solitude fall away, each note a release of the pain and silence that had once defined me. The melody was no longer just a distant echo but a living, breathing testament to resilience and hope. Surrounding me were faces marked by their own journeys, some etched with sorrow, others alight with newfound laughter, but all united in this moment of belonging. I thought back to the night when I first heard the stranger's song drifting through the darkness, a fragile thread that reached into the depths of my loneliness and stirred a longing I had thought lost. That melody had been the spark that ignited a transformation not only in my life, but in the lives of so many who had gathered here. It was a reminder that even in the deepest isolation, a single voice could break through and call us back to one another. The community that had blossomed around this porch was a living testament to the power of reaching out, of sharing stories and songs that heal. Neighbors became friends, strangers became family, and the spaces once filled with silence now echoed with the warmth of connection. The music was a bridge, spanning the distances between souls and weaving a tapestry of shared humanity. I looked around at the faces glowing in the lantern light, feeling a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. Each person carried their own scars and triumphs, their own stories of loss and love, but together we had created something new. A sanctuary where hearts could mend and spirits soar. The porch was no longer a symbol of isolation but a gateway to belonging and hope. As the night deepened, the songs turned softer, more reflective, carrying the weight of memories and the promise of tomorrow. We sang of pain and healing, of dreams deferred and dreams reborn. The music was both a confession and a celebration, an acknowledgement of the past and an embrace of the future. In that circle of song and light I felt whole. The journey from loneliness to connection had been long and uncertain, but it had forged a strength within me I had never known. I was no longer just the woman who had sat by a dusty window, yearning for a sign. I was a part of something greater, a living thread in a vibrant tapestry of community. The night held us gently, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to light, a path paved with courage, compassion, and the enduring power of love. The music carried us forward, a song that would continue to echo in our hearts long after the last note faded into the dawn. Surrounded by friends and neighbors, I closed my eyes and let the harmony wash over me, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the quiet strength found in connection. In this moment under the vast Texas sky, I was home, whole, seen, and deeply loved.